480 Hz. Can you actually see the difference? Well, actually, yes. If you play games that can run at up to 480 frames per second, the smoothness is like nothing else out there. Compared to 360 Hz, it is a pretty small jump, but when you now compare it to 240, it is a night and day difference. 480 Hz honestly makes 240 look like a slideshow, and when you compare the two side by side, it definitely feels that way too. This monitor though takes it even further. It can do 480 Hz at 1440p, which is kind of a big deal because previously if you wanted this surreal, like lifelike motion on your screen, you would have to settle for 1080p, either a 25-inch TN panel or a pretty large 32-inch dual-mode OLED, which is what I'm currently running. And look, 1080p is fine, but have you seen 1440p on a new 27-inch OLED panel? It is unbelievably clear. And that is basically what makes this the ultimate 1440p gaming monitor right now. It's the ASUS PG27AQDP. 27 inches, 1440p, 480 Hz on the newest generation W-OLED panel. Something that I want to mention right away here as well is that these new W-OLED panels are using a new sub-pixel layout compared to what we've seen on the previous 1440p OLEDs. Here, there's basically no color fringing on text at all. Desktops now look super clean, and I also noticed that even like game elements, player outlines, and my crosshair, I don't know, everything just looked slightly sharper and cleaner compared to those previous 1440p OLEDs. If there's one word that I can use to describe what it's like to actually play on this thing, it's just clear. I mean, everything is super clear all the time. That 480 Hz refresh rate combined with this new 1440p OLED panel, it is the ultimate combination. It's also kind of just insane how far monitor technology has come in the past year and a half. I mean, if you told me back then that this monitor would exist today with these kind of specs, I mean, I don't think I would believe you. And let's not forget, being an OLED, the pixels can switch color instantly. So the response times are virtually 0 milliseconds. That means there's no pixel ghosting at all. As for what that looks like when you're actually tracking a target, well, it's basically as clean as it gets. 0 millisecond response times at 480 Hz on a 1440p OLED is no joke. Technically, 540Hz TN with ULMB or DIAC is a bit clearer, but honestly, I'd much rather play at 1440p, because in actual games, I just found that extra resolution to easily make up that clarity difference. There is also an ELMB mode, which you can use at 240Hz for games that can't achieve that full 480Hz refresh rate. It does clean up the motion tracking quite a bit, but the brightness is very, very low in this mode, to the point where it's only really usable in a very dark room. Also, if you're having some trouble adjusting to the 27-inch panel here, maybe you've been playing on 25 inches, there is actually a 24.5-inch cropped mode on this monitor where you still retain the 480Hz refresh rate and you actually get a 1-to-1 pixel readout. I'm pretty used to playing on these big panels at this point, but for those that prefer this smaller image and maybe are using it to adjust to this larger panel, it's easily something that I can recommend. But yeah, in terms of 480Hz, whether you need that for your setup, it's really up to you. Personally, I play games that can run at those sort of frames, and I am honestly addicted to the smoothness that it offers. Games like Overwatch, Counter-Strike, Valorant, even Fortnite, these games can run north of 480 frames per second, even at 1440p with the current latest hardware. And that's only going to get easier as faster GPUs and CPUs come out. I've played on pretty much every type of monitor there is at this point, but this super high refresh rate stuff for competitive shooters for me is by far the most enjoyable. It feels like you're seeing the game in its purest, most unfiltered form. So yeah, this monitor is freaking insane, especially for games like this. But I mean, you can pretty much just look at the spec sheet and tell that that's going to be the case. The real question though, is there anything here that is like a drawback or a reason not to get this monitor? And the answer is no, but there are a couple of little catches. The first one is that alt tabbing on this monitor, alt tabbing between your desktop and the game that you're playing, takes forever. Let's just say I always found myself joining my ranked games a few seconds later than usual. Pretty sure this is related to the display stream compression that has to be used here, but yeah, it is definitely something to get used to. I don't consider this a deal breaker at all, but it is kind of annoying. And the other inconvenience is the brightness, which is just a drawback of OLED overall. This monitor is actually one of the brightest OLEDs that I've tested, but it's still nothing compared to an LCD with a dedicated backlight. Like if you currently own an IPS IPS or a TN monitor, for example, and you're using that thing close to 100%, yeah, OLED is gonna be quite the shock for you. I found myself using this one at like 80% brightness at night, and then during the day typically firing it all the way up to 100%, and then even turning the uniform brightness off to squeeze out a little bit more overall brightness. On most IPS or TN monitors, this would be like 70%. And the last inconvenience, of course, is the price. At $1,000 US, this is not a cheap monitor, but can you even be mad? I mean, $1,000, that is a little bit cheaper than the enthusiast top tier OLEDs that are out there, which are like $1,200, $1,300. So yeah, for what you're getting, which is basically the ultimate 1440p monitor, something that's realistically gonna sit on your desk for like the next 5 years, I think $1,000 is perfectly reasonable. That does make it though as much as $250 more expensive versus the 360Hz options out there. But I don't know, for that surreal smoothness and the superior sharpness that you get here from the new subpixel, I can see a lot of people justifying that extra cash. Especially because here, I mean, what else could you possibly want from a 27-inch gaming monitor? It pretty much ticks all the boxes. I mean, no doubt in the future we'll get even brighter OLEDs, even better HDR capabilities and DisplayPort 2.1, but I think the actual experience upgrade there over this is gonna be honestly pretty minimal. The black levels can't improve beyond this. The response times are already at 0 milliseconds. I don't think the colors are gonna get noticeably that much better than what we have here. And most game engines kind of tap out around that 500-600 FPS mark anyway. So I don't know. I really don't know where we go from here. This might be my final monitor review. As for whether I'll be switching over to this, I mean, damn, it's easily the best gaming monitor out there right now for what I do, but I just can't give up the dual mode OLED that's currently on my desk and the convenience that that gives me at my setup to switch between my 4K workflow and gaming when I want to. If, however, I ever have a gaming setup which is separate from my work setup, I am grabbing this monitor in a heartbeat.